Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is a newcomer into the temple, best known as Chaos Joe in some places, and has been answering the call of the pen since 2019. Now coming back to us with the GM-less RPG known as Chosen, the one and only Joe Weaver. How you doing today, man?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Hopefully you don't get too many Hey Joe references.
No, actually, I don't. I get less Hey Joes and more Dreamweaver, like the song Dreamweaver. I get more of those than I do the Hey Joes.
That is disappointing. There's a perfect opportunity for a Hendrix joke and nobody bit.
Nope. I had a former boss who he was hard on the Dreamweaver every time he saw me. It was pretty funny.
Mm-hmm. And then again, I end up getting a bunch of Terminator jokes. So what do I know? But I suppose the best place to start is the humble beginnings, as I often do around here. So walk me through your first introduction to role-playing games and what made it stick.
All right, so it's kind of interesting because the first introduction to tabletop was I'm sure a lot of people say D&D, but mine was actually Rifts in 1995. I've been playing Magic the Gathering with some friends since for about a year, and a friend of mine and his older brother had bought the source book for Rifts, and we started playing that. Played for about 3 years. During that time, we kind of mixed in Star Wars role-playing game. And then when the special editions came out in 97, I think it was, we kind of went hard in on the Star Wars. And I've always been a Star Wars fan, so that really clicked with me. However, that was when I graduated high school. I left home, and I lost my group. I didn't play. But at the same time, that was around the same time that we got our first PlayStation. And so, not realizing it at the time, I had totally bit on the RPG. I mean, I was on board. Mm-hmm. I was like doing the Rose thing on the top of the boat. Like I loved it. I loved the storytelling. I loved the aspect of it. But since I didn't have that, hindsight, I was looking for that in other places. So whenever I played PlayStation, I would play games like Final Fantasy VII and Metal Gear Solid 2. And just so I could get the storytelling aspect of the RPG. And that went on for several years until 2005, when I met a fellow nerd who I'm still friends with today that introduced me to D&D. And that was 3.5. Yeah, we played 3.5 for about 2 years. And then another move took me away from that, and I went on a long hiatus of tabletop games. Again, filling it in with video games, mostly RPGs. In 2010, that was when I took my first dive into trying to write a book. And it was because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. It was naturally going to be a Star Wars book. And I did probably over 100 hours of research and wrote 3 chapters. And then my disk drive broke. And keyword in that sentence is disk drive, because I didn't have a hard drive. I had an actual disk. And so it was gone. Like a Thanos snap, it was gone. and I was like just heartbroken. So I didn't try to write again until actually while I was waiting. I was with my wife at the hospital waiting for her to. She was in labor, and so that's when I started writing again. And not long after, I decided to go back to school. And when I went back to school, my very first semester, I had credits that transferred with me. So I transferred in as like a sophomore or junior. And my very first semester, I met a man who is now my mentor, who not only was one of my English professors, but he also wrote for Goodman Games on the side. And we had long conversations, and he ended up getting me back into the tabletop scene.
Mm-hmm.
And so really it's kind of been a on again, off again relationship with tabletop. But now that I actually not just play, but also write and design, we're kind of like hooked at the hip, I should say. But I love the thing that I think that stuck with me the most with tabletop RPGs is just the storytelling aspect and being able to embody your characters and just pretty much do whatever the hell you want to.
Mm-hmm. Now, with Chosen, what would you say would be some of the media that would fit its Appendix N, as it were?
That's actually pretty easy. I have quite a bit. First and foremost, pretty much anything written by the Japanese author Hideyuki Kikuchi. He is the creator of Vampire Hunter D, Wicked City, Demon City Shinjuku. And I have read 24, 25 of his English translated novellas. And so he played a huge role in like my influence as far as like what affects this game. Also, IPs such as The Witcher were a big deal. I've read the books, I've played the games. I love it. I love the concept of it. And Warrior Nun, Castlevania, just mainly dark fantasy. I don't really have anything much in the Appendix N for Chosen than just dark fantasy, because especially with Kikuchi's work, like with Vampire Hunter D, he finds a way to make a fantasy setting feel like a dark western with a little bit of technology here and there. But primarily, it's just everything is just so gloomy, and you really get the grit. That's the word I'm looking for, is grit. It's just very gritty, and that's one thing that I love about his work.
Everything's gloomy except for the left hand.
Correct, except for the left hand. Left hand is probably one of my favorite characters in most fiction.
But now Chosen is leaning into being a GM-less game. In fact, you have that right at the top of the Kickstarter. Correct. Obviously, GM-less games are going to be in the minority, much in the same way that diceless games are in the minority. That's not to say that they aren't present, but there's going to be a lot fewer of them when you're looking at the totality of the TTRPG scene. What made you want to go with the GM-less route?
Personal experience, first and foremost. During those long hiatuses where I wasn't playing tabletop RPGs, if I had a game where I could have sat down with a set of dice and whatever other little requirements a game might have, I probably would have played it. And not only that, but the solo RPG and GM-less scene is getting a lot more love, partially because of COVID, but I also write for Imagining Games, and I run booth for them at conventions. And the number one thing that I hear from customers is, I really want to buy this, but I don't have anyone to play with. And so, how do you fix that problem? You take out the necessity for them needing someone else to play with. And the thing about Chosen is that it is designed first and foremost as a solo RPG, but with GMless 100% built in, with that in mind. So I actually call it the test your might mechanic, where you just apply that mechanic, and it takes it from a solo game to, you can have a party of four hunters chasing down monsters, and you don't need a GM. So I mean, it really is open to. There's a lot of possibilities out there with GMless stuff.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, with a lot of TTRPGs over the years, there's been a concept, not an intentional one, but just the way things ended up going, that I've called "all roads lead to Rome." This idea that there is a certain type of resolution mechanic that much of the mechanics spring from, whether it be resolving with a D20, whether it be a D100, whether it be all of the dice, looking at you, Shadowrun, or weird dice, looking at you, Fudge, and Fate. What would the Rome in this analogy be for Chosen?
Well, I've actually built the engine for Chosen, specifically for this type of game, and it can be used with other games too. That's what my plan is. Mm-hmm. But the Chaos engine focuses on supporting narrative gameplay with a 2d6 primary system, and everything works itself out in real time. So, for example, you enter combat and you roll 2d6, and you're rolling not only for yourself, but you're rolling for your enemy as well. And whoever wins that roll inflicts damage. It really focuses on the chaos of combat, because in real life, it's not like, hey, you can shoot at me now, and I'm going to shoot at you next. Or, hey, swing your sword at me, or I'm going to swing a sword at you. It's like real time happening, everybody at each other's throats. So that's kind of what the Chaos Engine focuses on. And then when you're not in combat, it really focuses on the narrative aspect of exploration. Mm-hmm. For example, the map in my game is going to play a huge role. Whenever you're exploring, you travel by weeks, and whatever landscape you're in, when you get there, you'll have to answer a narrative question as to what do you see based on the landscape that you're in. And if you have trouble with that, I'm going to provide charts for you to roll on that you just kind of fill in the blanks. Mm-hmm. And so really, like I said, playing on that narrative aspect of exploring a strange, dark world, and trying not to die while doing it.
Mm-hmm. Now, in regards to character, there's a few elements of character creation that I wanted to get a feel for how each of these aspects affects character creation as a whole. Mm-hmm. The first would be character origin, which is going to be a starting point between human, demonkin, and Dhampir.
Correct.
You describe origin as a difficulty meter.
Correct.
Is it a case? So my question is, what sort of contributions does the choice between those three origins play into the potential kit of a character?
Okay, so the way that plays into kits is mainly with hit bonuses and damage bonuses. So, for example, humans in my world are just human. They are a chosen, so they have been celestial ordained to wield uh, these powers that normal humans don't. But they don't get the added bonuses of superhuman strength or superhuman agility. So they're going to be the toughest uh, origin to play. A demonkin is kind of in the middle, and because they're half human and half, they're basically descendants of the Volratha, the original demons who inadvertently helped save humankind. Um, and the Dhampir are they have the most bonuses because they uh, basically come from ancient vampires that are some of them are even older than the Volratha that seeded the Demonkin.
Mm-hmm. Nah, and with that in mind, is it a case where even if you choose Damphir, there's still going to be a decent amount of challenge, since you mentioned that Damphir are excellent for beginners.
Correct. They are excellent for beginners, but it will definitely still present a challenge. The playtests that I have been doing have been using the Dampier for the most part because I want to make sure that at the easiest level it is still a challenge. And the very first playtest that I did, I thought I was going to die. I was down to 1 hit point.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, even though they have the most bonuses, the world itself really doesn't care about that. It just wants to kill you.
Now, the next element would be the houses, which
Mhm.
I'd say are probably going to be the biggest contributing factor to one's kit beyond equipment.
Yes.
With each of the houses, since you talk about each of them having unique abilities that they bring to the table,
Hmm.
I'd like you to delve a bit into the playstyle that that each of the houses might foster.
Okay. So, like, for example, the House Deo, uh, which is the house of demon slayers. They each house itself will have a bonus like to fighting what it's chosen specialty. Now, in chosen, I'm not really planning for um, cross for mixing classes. However, I mean, if people want to homebrew it, go right ahead. But in my mind, it doesn't make sense in the world because you're already doing that without even realizing it. Because the way this works is when you go into a town, the first thing you do is approach the order that is in that village, the order station, and find out what contracts there are in that town. And you can take anything from it. You don't have to just take contracts from that your house specializes in. You can take contracts that other houses specialize in as well. That way you get a wide assortment of monsters that you're fighting. And not only that, but the like for example, like I said, with House Deo, if you were to go to your first town and take a demon contract, then you would have bonuses against the demon contract that other houses would not. With it really comes down to how you want to play it. Like with mechanics, some houses will be more in your face melee type tank stuff. Others will be more of a like mid range. I'm trying to give an assortment for people who want to try the different houses. The most unique out of all of them is going to be House Velo, which is the house that hunts eldritch horrors. Because of the way that House Velo works, instead of picking brute or agile as a body type, you will actually pick Eldritch Knight or Eldritch Assassin. Because the way that works is that with them, they are trained from birth to channel Eldritch energy. And my goal with them is to, once they go in, when you arrive at a combat scenario, you can channel the energy, and you basically become that thing, like an Eldritch Knight or an Eldritch Assassin. Eldritch Assassin is going to have agility-based attacks. Eldritch Knight is going to have brute-based attacks. But there will still be an assortment as far as ranged and melee.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I'd say to a certain extent. And you did bring up something else I wanted to dive into. That being the fact that you have close range, you have mid range, and the like. And this is where we get into combat.
Mm-hmm.
It would be very difficult to do that kind of close mid-range kind of approach effectively in Theater of the Mind. But I also suspect you're not exactly doing grid combat in the typical sense either. So what sort of combat sandbox do you have with Chosen?
So, like I said, this world is out to kill you. So first things first, when you accept a contract, there's open world exploration and there's city exploration. So city exploration is basically just your contracts and stuff, and any other shops that might be in the city. But when you accept a contract, you roll a d4, and that's how many. You roll a d6, and that's how many days it takes for you to find the lair of your contract. Now, once you reach the lair, you have to roll for basically, the way I look at it is, in any good horror movie, you don't mess with the monster's lair, especially not in the early part of the film. So why should a monster be vulnerable at their lair? First thing you do when you get to a lair in my game, you have to roll to see if the monster gets a jump on you. If it doesn't, then combat can begin when you're ready for it to. If it does, then you immediately take damage. So it presents this idea that, I want the environment to feel dangerous. And by giving the things that you're hunting more agency, I feel like that does that. As far as someone asked me not that long ago, I think it was last week actually, how I plan to keep a GMless game from becoming stale. Well, that's because my goal for that answer is to provide enough variation in monster type and you can have even like different monster types within the same things. Like your werewolf can have different actions, like, or it can look different. It'll be bigger or smaller. It'll be stronger or weaker. And this will actually kind of give you a little bit bigger sandbox. Even if you're working with the same amount of space, it makes the idea of you going in here, I'm not going to get the same thing every time because you have to roll for it. And it like gives you, it comes up on the chart. The chart tells you what you got. It's either you decide, hey, I mean, as a GM-less player, if you're playing it by yourself, yeah, you can cheat. Be like, no, I don't want that. I roll again. If you want to do that, that's fine. But either way, I want to present enough variation that you're not like, God, I just killed this thing 5 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen in some GM-less games, they operate on a kind of soft AI approach when it comes to monster behavior. Since in a game that has a GM, they're usually playing the role of the monsters, NPCs, adversaries, whatever you want to call it. But in a GM-less game, that's not something that can be relied upon. So how do you approach that particular conundrum?
With that, it's actually, I'm using kind of like the partially AI thing. Like you've got stuff that's built in. But at any given time, if, like for example, we'll use the werewolf again. So you're fighting a werewolf. If when you roll for combat, if the werewolf rolls a 6, it doesn't just do a regular crit. It does like a special action, and then you have to roll on its special action table, which is minimal. It's like a D4 because it's a scene. I have to keep space for this, but still, it provides a variation in how it behaves. So in a way, yeah, it is kind of like a AI because, like I said, there are some actions that are built in. Like when it reaches a certain hit point, it automatically does its like pounce or whatever. Mm-hmm. But in between that, it can still do those actions without being run by its hit points.
Mm-hmm. And now when it comes to weapon loadout, I think because of the kind of approach that you're taking and given the inspirations that I'm seeing, it's important to have individual weapons and individual builds of equipment feel unique. How is that being represented in Chosen?
Okay, so very much so. It needs to be unique. You will have a variety of swords, pick from a variety of, well, I would just say swords. We'll say melee weapons, and then mid-range weapons, and ranged weapons. And each house that you pick, each build that you have, will basically, you can pick from those. And if you want to mix and match, you can mix and match. One thing that I am being a stickler on, though, is I only want any given hunter chosen. I should say any given chosen can only have one relic on them at a time. The relics can be very powerful. Like for example, a really important relic for the werewolf hunters would be it makes them immune to lycanthropy. So these relics boost the character and give it like an added individual aspect, and that's part of your loadout. Now, as far as the other thing that I have no qualms with is you can loot the body in my game, and And so, like, if you want to now, granted, some monsters you have are not good. Most monsters really are not going to have a whole lot of weapons that you're hunting in my game. Um, However, vampires totally can, and so can demons. So, like, those two in specific, particularly, you can actually find a really good weapon off them and trade it in for your own if you want. One thing that I do want to mention, since we're talking about combat, though, is the idea, uh, this idea of shadow poisoning. So in Chosen, you wield power taught to you by demons. Now, originally, the demons are long gone. The Volrotha have been, in the lore, the Volrotha have already been taken back to their plane and are currently being tortured for generations. But their legacy is what they taught the humans. And in my world, humans cannot wield hellfire. It's too strong for them. But the demons are also vulnerable to void energy. So the Volrotha taught humans how to pull power from the void, which is where all of this stems from. And the shadows that when you use void energy, you build up a basically you kind of darken your soul in a way. It becomes more shadow like, and the only way to disperse this is going to be built into the mechanics, like with certain actions, primarily violent ones, like killing, like basically like a final move. If you slice the head off of a werewolf or whatever, that will help monitor your the amount of shadow poisoning that you have in your body. And so it adds an extra layer to this, that while you are this total badass who can do all this stuff, it's dangerous to use. And it can kill you if you reach the maximum amount. Then basically you stop being yourself.
Mm-hmm. And with that in mind, there's also the notion of your physical build being either brute or agile. Is that the equivalent of, say, a strength build versus a dex build in, say, a Souls-like?
Correct. That's actually almost exactly what it's like. That was my thinking. Mm-hmm. So like, the brutes will get bonuses to damage, and to hit, and the agile. One of the mechanics in the game is, since I was designing the Chaos Engine, I was like, if I'm gonna do this 2d6 like real time combat, what happens if I roll a deuce, like two deuces, right? Or what happens if I roll two sixes? Well, that ends up in a deadlock where you are locked in combat with this creature, and then you have to roll for a break. Well, if you are using an agile build, you will get a bonus to that. Anything that requires agility, you'll have a bonus to that. Specifically, like if a creature gets like an attack of opportunity on you, and you get a chance to dodge, then you'll have a bonus to that dodge.
Mm-hmm. That certainly makes sense. Now, with that in mind, I'd also seen that the core die that you're going to be that is going to be used in this is a 1d4, a 1d10, and a 2d6.
Mhm.
Um, what would each of those die be used for primarily? And I'm guessing, especially because of the whole different colors thing, the 2d6 is the one that's most commonly used.
Correct. Yeah, the 2d6 are going to be your primary dice in this game. The d4 and d10 will primarily have to do with circumstantial events, such as, like, for example, the d4, just as a safety net, I'm trying to provide players with some small, simple charts for some things. Like, when you leave out, you get to pick you pick which direction you go. This is kind of like an open world exploration thing. So you pick north or whatever, or northwest. If you don't want to pick that, then you roll a d4, and that's the direction you go. And if like for the D10 specifically is going to be used for determining monster variation. Like, what kind of vampire are you facing? Is he an 8-foot tall brute? Is he a wiry 6-foot tall energy vampire? Like, what kind of? It's mainly going to be used. The accessory dice will be used to supplement the d6s. Your d6s will be your main dice.
Mm-hmm. Now, you had suggested that the 2d6 be of two different colors. Why
Yes.
is that?
The main reason behind that is that the only time you'll be rolling 2d6 specifically is during combat, and that way you have one dice that is for your character and one dice that is for your enemy. Now, that is not a requirement. You can have whichever dice you want as long as you know which one you roll. The reason I said it's preferably two colors is so it's just for ease of mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when you described it as two colors, what immediately came to mind is, say, the yin and yang dice that are used in feng shui, where
Right.
it's about either getting a large gap between them or having them match. As well as
Yeah.
the 2d12 setup that we're seeing with Daggerheart, even though that's not out yet.
Right. Now, I'm not actually familiar with Daggerheart, but yes, I know what you're referring to with the feng shui. But no, this is mainly just for one dice represents you, one dice represents your opponent.
That certainly makes sense. Now, with that in mind, when it comes to when it comes to the types of encounters, it sounds like there's a variety, but there's also variations on several.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yes.
is it a case where that's going to be chosen, or is the variety semi-randomized?
That's really up to the player. You can there will be a chart provided of what you can face, and again, it's like the narrative aspect. What do you see? What kind of vampire? What would you like for this to be? If you want to go through the chart and pick everything for everything, then you're welcome to do that. But the charts themselves will be numbered so that if you want to truly make it random, then you can just roll for it, and it will present the variety of monster listed.
Mm-hmm. So, now that brings me to the test your might mechanic that you're doing, which sounds like it's a means of doing a sliding difficulty.
Yes.
How does that work out?
So, with each increase of the test your might slider, basically, the the contract you have, or the monster you're facing, will gain hit points as well as a an additional ability. So, for example, even if you're two novice vampire hunters and you're going after vampire, you will likely face nothing less than because of the difficulty slider, it will be the equivalent of a master vampire because it's two levels above, which is killable, but it's
Yeah, I can certainly get that. Now, with that said, what are you shooting for as far as a total page count for the book?
Right now, I'm at 48 because I was part of Zine Quest this year. I have the Zine Quest badge for the zine, and that limits me to 48 pages because that's their rule for the page number for a zine. Now, what my goal is here is I'm a writer, so anyone who has backed the game or has read the updates, you can. I have lots of lore. It's in my head. It's on my computer, and so I can probably either guarantee that there's going to be a lore library, or there's going to be potential expansions. Since we funded today, this version is happening, but there's always the potential for something larger.
Mm-hmm. And what would you be shooting for as far as a release window? Not a date per se, but a general ballpark.
So for the digital release, I'm shooting for October. That's just so that I can make sure all of the charts are like they need to be. I'm going to be playtesting over the summer. I've already scheduled the playtest at Origins Fair. And I'll be doing other conventions this year as well. And I want to get my goal specifically is to get the PDFs out by October because I want you guys to have it for Halloween. And then the physical version, I'm aiming for January.
Mm-hmm. And I'll certainly keep an eye out for it as this kind of thing develops.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my temple and enjoy the madness that happens here.
Oh, no problem. I had a blast. Thank you.
And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
You're here.
And of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there will be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here, on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
I was